Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Liana, and today we're going to be discussing the film Mute by Duncan Jones. I just recently, as of a couple of weeks ago, I uploaded my discussion on Moon, which is one of my favorite films. This is ever so slightly related, so I will link that other discussion down below if you'd like to see that, but you do not have to have seen Moon prior to seeing this. It's just one of those things where there's a couple of little Easter eggs that kind of pop up now and then, but completely unnecessary for you to see both. It's just one of those things where when you see that, you're like, oh, I remember that. So, this was co-written and directed by Duncan Jones, as was Moon. It was released on Netflix on February 23rd of this year. A lot of people didn't want to fund this film, so that's why it got pushed onto Netflix. It's rated R for violence, language, and some sexuality. There's no actual nudity except for robot nudity, if that offends you. It stars Alexander Skarsgård, Paul Rudd, and Justin Theroux. And the story, I usually start these discussions, I don't call them reviews, but discussions, with a non-spoiler plot synopsis so that you can kind of see if it sounds like something you'd be interested in. So this revolves around a man named Leo who has been mute since a childhood accident. Due to his mother's religious beliefs, they're Amish. He's never had surgery to correct his vocal cords, and therefore he's lived his whole life being unable to talk. This takes place in a futuristic cityscape. They live in Berlin, so there's a lot of technology around, and obviously it's very difficult for him, even more so than it would be today. Leo works as a bartender, and he has a lovely girlfriend by the name of Nadira. Now, Nadira seems to have been caught up in some sort of trouble, and one day she goes missing and he tries to find her, and that's how I can sum it up without spoiling anything. So now, from this point on, I'm going to be discussing a lot of spoilers. You have been warned. So I actually really enjoyed this film. A lot of people didn't. It was funny. I watched it the day it came out, and as soon as I finished watching it, I thought I'd go online and see what other people were saying about it, and the Rotten Tomatoes score was like 8%. And I went, what? How's that possible? This doesn't seem right. And there are some viewers like myself who enjoyed it, but for the most part, a lot of people just don't seem to like this film. And there are two main reasons that I gather why that is. Number one, people seem to think that it meanders, and number two, people didn't seem to think that this movie is about anything. They don't think that there are any underlying themes. Well, I can't say whether or not it meanders because that's a personal thing. As for whether or not this movie is about anything, I disagree. I strongly disagree. I think that there is something going on here and a message that this film tries to convey. I had actually listened to some interviews with Duncan Jones, and he was explaining his thought process behind this film, and that didn't really influence me, but I do agree with what he's saying. Now, this film is largely about parents and children. More so than that, it's about how parents' decisions impact their children, whether negatively or not, and how sometimes as children we try so hard to respect our parents' wishes that it can backfire and it can have an impact on us that isn't good. So we may try to live up to our parents' wishes, but in the end it may not be in our best interest to do so. So let's start with Leo. As we know, as a child, his throat was cut by a boat motor when he was in the water. and his mother rushed him to the hospital, and the doctors there told him that they won't know whether or not they can save him unless they try. And they could try with surgery. His mom is very adamant that they won't be doing that. That is her decision. He doesn't get a say in the matter, and he appears to have a younger, or not younger, older sister. And she's very, very silent as well, and she doesn't appear to have been in an accident, but she does appear as though she could be mute. So because of this, Leo has gone his entire life without speaking. He never really had a choice in the matter. So there's so much technology surrounding him. There's television, which he doesn't own one, and anytime he sees one, he turns away from it. He doesn't watch it. There are telephones that are like cell phones, but much more advanced. They have more advanced video capabilities that we don't have yet. He doesn't own one until his partner Nadira gives him one, and even then, it's a really old version of cell phones, and he doesn't use it until he's basically forced to. Leo doesn't own a car, and as evidenced later in the film when he steals a car, he's obviously never driven one. He's a wood carver. You can see that he has like a little workshop that he's been carving different things like headboards, wooden headboards. And he always makes these little tiny wooden balls that are intricately carved for Nadira. And all of this stems from the fact that his mother and his family in general had such strong Amish upbringing and Amish beliefs. I really don't think that Leo would have lived this way had it not been for that, because a friend asks Nadira at one point why Leo doesn't talk, and she says it's complicated. It's his mother's fault. He needs surgery, but it's against her beliefs. So that strongly implicates her as the reason why he's never had his voice fixed and he lives the way he does. But throughout the film, Leo starts going against all of this. When he thinks that Nadira is in trouble, he picks up his mobile phone that she gave him. He picks that up for the first time to try and contact her. He does steal the car, like I mentioned, even though he's never driven before. There are scattered terminals throughout the city in which he must try and track Nadira down, like track down her phone. This is difficult for him because a lot of it uses voice input, which he's unable to do. And so oftentimes this will put kind of like a block in his progress. He uses violence, even though the Amish people are non-violent, and I would say that prior to this he was a pacifist. This seems fairly heavily implied by his overall behavior prior to Nadira being hurt and put in harm's way. And eventually he comes across Nadira's mother, who doesn't speak English, but he's able to understand what she's trying to convey, which is that Nadira actually has a small daughter and that her husband, or possibly ex-husband, is not a good man. And so putting two and two together, we start to, figure out what's going on. So allow me to leave Leo for just a second, and let's talk about Nadira. So just prior to her disappearance, she was trying to tell Leo what was going on. She was saying that she had to tell him about someone. Naturally, Leo thought that that meant that she had another lover. This wasn't the case. She was trying to say that she had a daughter, and she had been saving up money from her job to try and get her daughter Josie away from her father, because she thought that that was in her daughter's best interest. And let's be honest, I agree. Her husband, or ex-husband, feels much differently. His name is Bill, but he goes by the nickname of Cactus, and that's Paul Rudd's character. He makes it very clear within the first few seconds of speaking on screen. He very strongly disagrees with Nadira on this. When he's conversing with his friend Donald, aka Duck, very clever, Cactus says, "She's a kid. She stays with me." And Duck says, "But what does Josie want?" To which Cactus replies, "Who cares? She's a kid. She does what she's told." I should mention at this point, Duck is a pedophile. He preys on very small female children. It's important to note this because Cactus does tell him to stay away from Josie at one point in the film, because Duck even mentions Josie in a not so cool way, and so Cactus makes it very clear: stay away from her, don't talk to her, point blank. And so, yeah, Cactus doesn't care what Josie wants as long as she's not with her mother. Of course, at this point in the film, the audience is not supposed to know that Nadira has a husband or child, and we're not supposed to know that Cactus is related to Nadira in any way. Obviously, I'd seen this before, so I knew. And I'm telling you this now because I kind of need to. But at this point in the film, Cactus appears to be a single father. And if you're watching this for the first time, he appears to be doing what he thinks, again, is right for Josie, as one parent would do. He's been gathering intel on how to get false passports for himself and Josie so that they can flee Berlin. Eventually, through flashbacks, we find out what's actually conspired, and that is that Cactus abducted Nadira in the middle of the night from Leo's apartment. He spiked their drinks and he took Nadira. Also that she could be out of the picture and that he would have Josie. And he basically suffocates her with a plastic sheet, telling her the whole time that he would rather kill Nadira than let her have Josie. Wow. When Cactus and Leo finally meet up, Leo stabs Cactus right through the throat with a knife, rendering him obviously unable to speak, and he's laying there very slowly, bleeding out on the floor of his own basement. When Duck comes across him, he tells him that he shouldn't have killed Mother, referring to Nadira, and that they had a good thing going. He also tells Cactus that he should have treated him better. And remember how I said that he was a pedophile? Well, in Cactus's last moments alive, there's a small video screen with a feedback loop of Josie's room, and he can see Duck going in there to comfort her. And so he knows that he's royally messed up and that this is a parent's worst nightmare because his daughter is going to be taken care of by a pedophile. And in those moments, I truly believe that he would take it all back. He really would. After that, Duck knocks Leo unconscious and actually performs vocal cord surgery on him in order to give him a voice again, which of course Leo doesn't use the voice, even though Duck really wants him to apologize for killing his friend Cactus. Duck takes Leo and Josie on a car ride to a bridge near a huge body of water, intending to throw Leo in. But as we've seen throughout the film, Leo can hold his breath for a very long time, so he grabs Duck and they go over the bridge together into the water. And he holds Duck under until he drowns, and Leo swims up to the top. This is kind of a throwback to the very start of the film, coming full circle. At the start of the film, Leo almost died in water, and at the end, Leo almost dies in water again. However, Josie comes incredibly close to the end of the bridge to check and see if Leo is okay, and of course, Leo's like trying to wave her away, like, no, go back. He doesn't want to use his voice just yet, but he's thinking he can signal to her. It doesn't work, and eventually he cries out, "It's dangerous. It's dangerous. Go back." And that's the first time that he speaks. And that's the first time he's spoken in decades. And that's important. It's very important. Obviously, it's more important to go against everything that he's ever been told, everything that his family has ever believed in, in order to save a life. And to think if his mother had had any say in it, he wouldn't have had a voice then in the first place, and Josie could have died. I feel like so much of this film's conflict could have been avoided if the parents had actually listened to their children and actually thought in the best interests of them. Leo came up against so many difficulties during his life because he had no voice. A little girl almost died because he wasn't able to call out to her and warn her that she would fall into the water. If Cactus had actually asked what his daughter Josie had wanted, he would have realized that she probably didn't want to be passed around from person to person, actually prostitute to prostitute, people with literally no child rearing experience at all, whenever she was around her dad. She needed stability, she needed her mom. Ideally, she needed both parents, but that wasn't going to happen. Keeping her mom out of the picture and eventually killing her was obviously wrong. I shouldn't even have to say that. It's stupid. Obviously wrong. Even Duck knew this, and he's an absolute asshole, so. But then, of course, you wouldn't have conflict, and every film needs conflict, so there you go. I guess that's all for this particular film. Feel free to agree or disagree down below. If you hated the film, let me know. I would love to know why. And if you liked the film, again, let me know. And I guess I'll see you in my next discussion. Bye, guys.